Chao Yang painstakingly arranged a birthday party for me. I had originally thought that after 7 years of devoted companionship, he was finally going to propose to me. However, in front of everyone he said he was sorry, and that he was getting married, but the bride wasn't me. At that time I had just blown out the candles, and was cutting the cake. If it hadn't been for his friend stopping me, the knife in my hand might have stabbed him. Of course the knife was plastic, and it wouldn't have hurt if it had hit him, just like his feelings for me. It seemed firm, but could break at the slightest touch. Chao Yang and I had been together for 5 years. In order to get close to him, and win his heart, I hit all my edges. Chao Yang came from a wealthy family, and was the only son. His temper wasn't exactly good, but he had an incredibly good-looking face, and even his eyes seemed to be filled with captivating smiles. The moment I saw his Grand Slam winning figure on the basketball court, I was immediately smitten. From then on I transformed myself. I grew my hair long, swapped my leather clothes for ladylike dresses, and served him attentively, following him around. All because of one sentence from him. I like girls who are like the girl next door. I could travel across half of the city to buy desserts, just because he said he wanted to eat them. I could also take a 300-mile taxi ride on New Year's Eve to accompany him to get drunk, just because he said he wanted to drink. Looking back on that time, I did almost everything a love-sick puppy would do. Now I don't feel ashamed so much as I think it was extremely naive. He didn't give me an official title, but everyone in the school tacitly regarded me as his girlfriend. On the day of graduation he drank until midnight at the farewell party. After the party, when I was helping him back, he grabbed my hand and took me straight to a hotel. In bed he was extremely gentle, completely different from his usual self. I let him do as he pleased without saying a word, as if I were making a sacrifice. Until he called out another girl's name, Lin Lin, at the end. I picked up my clothes and threw them in his face, ready to leave. But he hugged me from behind, holding me tighter than ever before. He said, "Jin Lan, be my girlfriend." He said, "Come with me. I'll marry you." I couldn't resist his tender promises. So I even broke off with my parents, refused the secure job they had arranged for me, packed a simple bag, and followed him back to Yang City. As for the girl named Lin Lin, he mentioned he never brought her up again, and I didn't ask either. Everyone has a past, I told myself. As long as I'm the one in his heart now, that's enough. I gambled everything on believing that Chao Yang was the one I could spend my life with. So much so that when he said we were breaking up expressionlessly at the birthday party, my first reaction was to throw the cake knife at him. After that I suddenly became speechless, as if I had lost my voice. I couldn't move a step. My heart was like the candles on the cake that had just burned out, instantly turning into a pile of ashes. That night after the birthday party I returned to the house we lived in, and sat there all night. I sent him a lot of messages and waited by the phone all night. Even though my heart was numb with pain, I still wanted an explanation. Perhaps there was still a glimmer of hope and stubbornness in my heart, and I still held on to a final bit of longing for him. I didn't wait for Chao Yang's call, nor did I see him. Instead I only received a text message. "Jin Lan, you can stay in the house as long as you like. I've transferred 500,000 yuan to your card. You're so sensible. I hope we can end things gracefully. Don't come looking for me." Sensible was the highest compliment he had given me in 7 years. I've never been one to yield easily. My friends say that women are made of water, but I'm made of steel. But I had softened my tough exterior into malleable clay, for Chao Yang, letting him shape me as he wished. However, the number 500,000 almost drained my last bit of strength, and crushed my remaining dignity underfoot. In Chao Yang's eyes I was probably just a cheap and sensible backup option. My remaining hope was shattered in an instant. I found that I couldn't cry out loud, but my tears were falling like beads with a broken string, and I couldn't wipe them away. That night was the most difficult time in my life. I don't even know how I got through it until dawn. Looking at myself in the mirror with swollen eyes and disheveled hair, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. The next day I packed a simple bag, and moved into a hotel. From the moment I moved into the hotel I stopped crying. I started going to work, clocking and socializing, and working on projects just like my old life. Soon the news of my breakup with Chao Yang spread throughout my social circle. My best friend called me almost 3 times a day persistently. I knew she was worried that I might do something stupid. I had once said that if Chao Yang left me I wouldn't be able to go on living. "Don't worry. I'm fine. I'm eating well and sleeping well. I'm not going to die." Of course I'm not going to die. After all these years I'm no longer the naive Jin Lan who regarded love as everything. Besides, why should I be devastated just because Chao Yang has someone new? There's no reason for that. Jin Lan will live a better life than him. That's the only way I can doidachi myself. Just after I hung up the phone it rang again. Thinking it was my best friend calling again, I answered and said, "Stop calling me. It's just a breakup. I'm fine. Lan Lan, mom and dad know you broke up. You come back home," my mother said cautiously on the other end of the phone. I was stunned, and the tears that had stopped flowing for a while streamed down my face again, betraying me. Over the years I haven't owed anyone, but the only people I feel sorry for are my parents. Back then, I was so determined to be with Chao Yang that I almost cut off relations with my family. However, when I was at my lowest, it was my parents who cared about me the most and wanted me to go home. I was such a fool. But I couldn't go back like this, at least not in such a decadent state. I couldn't make them worry about me anymore. Mom, I'm doing great here. My work is going smoothly, and I'm about to get a promotion. Don't worry. I'll come to see you after I finish this project, I said. My mother agreed repeatedly and then added, well, in that case, my classmate's son is also in Ing City. You two should meet. I couldn't bear to make them worry so much. With a pang of sadness in my heart, I didn't refuse this time. I got the man's contact information and arranged to meet him a few days later. I threw myself into my work even more vigorously than before. Soon I was assigned a major project. They say that when you're unlucky in love, you're lucky in other aspects. I guess that's somewhat true for me. One day, I got off work early for a change. Just as I was thinking about going back to rest, a friend called, saying there was good news, and inviting a few friends to gather. I hesitated for a moment, and the person on the other end quickly said, don't worry, Chao Yang isn't coming. Since they put it like that, I hurried back home, changed my clothes and rushed over. But I didn't expect my friend to be waiting for me at the door, looking embarrassed as he told me that Chao Yang was also there. I was stunned for a moment, then patted his shoulder, and pushed the door open to enter. The place fell silent for a moment. I tossed my hair and smiled. What? Aren't you used to seeing me? The day I left home, I cut my hair short and put on a stylish outfit, the style I loved most before I met Chao Yang. After being lost for so many years, I was gradually learning to be myself again. Chao Yang flicked the ash off his cigarette and stared at me for a few extra seconds, as if seeing me for the first time. Then he turned his head to talk to someone else. I chose a seat and joined the others in drinking and singing. It's not a big deal. I, Jin Lan, am not someone who can't take a loss. Soon, a strange girl pushed the door open. She smiled sweetly and said, I'm sorry. It's so late, and Chao Yang hasn't come back yet. I was a bit worried. Chao Yang immediately led her to his side, and everyone protested, asking why he brought someone along. Then I watched as Chao Yang apologized, picked up a glass of wine, and said, I'll drink this as an apology. This scene made me recall my past self. I had once gone to look for Chao Yang, because I was worried about him. Back then, he had driven me away impatiently, saying I was just causing trouble. The difference was that I never received Chao Yang's protection. Now I realized that Chao Yang wasn't just impatient. It was because it was me who went to find him. Because it was me he didn't cherish me. Because it was me, he could treat me with disdain. I let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, those days were over. The swaying lights were making me dizzy. I stood up, holding my wine glass. Everyone's eyes turned towards me with curiosity, and so did Chao Yang's. He was probably afraid I'd cause a scene. I smiled slightly. Let me toast everyone. Someone is waiting for me, so I won't stay long. I drained the wine in my glass in one gulp, and pushed the door open to leave. Of course, no one was waiting for me. I just used that as an excuse to leave. Suddenly, I felt like having a cigarette. I went to the balcony of the club, but I didn't expect someone was already there. Just as I was about to leave, he moved aside a little. I took out a cigarette. Do you mind? The man shook his head. I lit the cigarette, and watched the tip glow on and off. I couldn't help but laugh softly. I always thought Chao Yang was heartless. Turns out he could be considerate too. Soon, footsteps came from the corridor, and the balcony door was pushed open. I heard Chao Yang's cold voice. Jin Lan, you didn't take that 500,000 yuan. Are you trying to make me feel guilty, so you can keep pestering me? I was shocked. So he thought I was pestering him. How could that be? I, Jin Lan, can take things as they come. Once I've decided to leave, I won't look back. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them again, my gaze was clear. I smiled faintly. Mr. Chao, what are you talking about? I consider the past few years as if I fed a dog that bit me in return. Today, I'm here with my boyfriend. I just dropped by to see some friends. As I spoke, I pointed to the man next to me. Since he was in the shadow, Chao Yang, who was facing the light, couldn't see him clearly. I was a bit nervous, fearing he'd expose me, but my pride wouldn't allow me to show weakness in front of Chao Yang. Fortunately, he didn't say anything. I secretly let out a sigh of relief. A storm seemed to brew in Chao Yang's eyes. I could clearly feel his anger. What was he angry about? I sneered inwardly. Anyway, I didn't care anymore. Just then, the girl came out to look for him. Her voice was gentle, exactly the type he liked. She was much better than my pretentious self. They left hand in hand. Before leaving, I saw the warning look in Chao Yang's eyes. I knew he was warning me not to pester him anymore. How could I pester him again? I made a mistake once, but I won't make the same mistake twice. It wasn't until I heard a noise beside me that I remembered there was someone else here. I quickly thanked him. How embarrassing. Such a humiliating scene had been witnessed by a stranger. The next moment he stepped out, and I saw his face. I had never seen such an elegant-looking man. He was handsome in a cool and refined way, with a touch of scholarly air. He smiled slightly. "You're welcome. It didn't bother me at all." Then he left. A few days later, it was the day of the blind date. After work, I went to the coffee shop and saw a somewhat familiar man waving at me by the window. It was the man from the club balcony that day. So he was Chi Ming-che, my blind date partner. This was so embarrassing. Whether I really wanted to go on a blind date or not, it was still awkward to be seen in a breakup scene by my blind date partner. I was stunned. He pushed a cup of coffee towards me. It was at the right temperature, and it was my favorite Blue Mountain. I loved this flavor. It was just like my past love, sour with occasional hints of sweetness. Chaoyang didn't like Blue Mountain. He thought it was too sour, so I stopped drinking it after living with him. But how did Chi Ming-che know I liked Blue Mountain? I looked at him in confusion, and he seemed to understand my question. "I asked Auntie in advance," he said. So that's how it was. He was such a thoughtful and gentlemanly man. Since he didn't mention that night's embarrassment, I tried to forget about it, and quickly found a topic. "Mr. Chi, you're such an outstanding person. Why are you also going on a blind date?" Chi Ming-che put down his coffee. "To be honest, I just got out of a relationship. I was dumped. I was surprised. It was rare to find a man so candid. I couldn't help but laugh. What a coincidence. I was just dumped too." We looked at each other and smiled. Chi Ming-che then told me some interesting stories about his work at the hospital, and gradually I relaxed. Soon, the steak was served, and I started eating without hesitation. It felt great not to have to pretend to be a lady anymore. Anyway, Chi Ming-che had already seen me at my worst. He wouldn't be surprised by anything I did. "Do you still believe in love?" Chi Ming-che asked suddenly. I nodded. "Of course. It's just that I haven't met the right person yet. It's not love's fault." Chi Ming-che looked at me, his eyes shining brightly, which was really captivating. He pointed at the corner of my mouth, and I quickly wiped off the sauce that had John Dow it. "I've actually thought about what life would be like after getting married. 2 people, a cat and a dog. The house doesn't have to be big. We can each be busy with our own things on weekdays, and go on trips together during holidays," he said. Chi Ming-che smiled, and there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite understand. She didn't like my cat, and thought I was too busy with work. What a strange reason. I couldn't help but laugh. Everyone has their own experiences indeed. After I finished eating, this time Chi Ming-che didn't remind me. He directly reached out, and wiped the corner of my mouth. I was taken aback. Then I heard him say, "I think we're quite suitable. What do you think?" I didn't want to start a new relationship so soon. I told Chi Ming-che I needed to think about it. Chi Ming-che drove me home. When the car stopped in front of the hotel, he frowned slightly. I couldn't help but explain. "I've been too busy with work recently. I was planning to look for a house when I had time." Chi Ming-che thought for a moment. "I'm on leave recently. I can help you find a house." After thinking it over, I asked for his help. After all, I really didn't have the time. My mom was right. Having more friends makes things more convenient. But I didn't expect Chi Ming-che to be so efficient. Early the next morning, he told me to pack my things and get ready to move. The new house was even closer to my company than the hotel. I transferred the rent to Chi Ming-che. He said the landlord had only one condition. I had to live alone, and not bring anyone else back. I readily agreed. I specially took an afternoon off to move. When I showed up in front of him with only one suitcase, I could clearly see the surprise on his face. When we arrived at the new home, I found that it had already been cleaned spotlessly. I took this afternoon off for nothing. Chi Ming-che and I stared at each other in the living room. I rolled up my sleeves and stood up. "To thank you, I'll cook dinner tonight." We went to the nearby supermarket to buy groceries. But I didn't expect to run into Chaoyang there. He hated going to the supermarket the most. Why was he here with so much patience? As soon as Chaoyang turned around, I saw the girl on his arm. She was smiling sweetly, and would lean on Chaoyang when she was happy. No wonder. Only the person he truly loved could make him change his mind. Chi Ming-che took my hand that was gripping the shopping cart and said gently, "Be careful." It was not until he took the shopping cart from me that I came back to my senses. "I'm fine." However, Chaoyang had already heard the sound and turned his head to look in my direction. His expression changed slightly. "What are you doing here?" Just as I was about to speak, Chi Ming-che tightened his grip on my hand and said, "I'm accompanying Lan Lan to buy groceries." I was slightly surprised. So they knew each other. Chaoyang's face instantly took on a strange expression. He stared at our intertwined hands for a long time, and a hint of annoyance gradually appeared between his brows. "So it was you that day?" Chi Ming-che nodded slightly. "It's me." It was not until the girl beside him asked curiously, "Chaoyang, who are they?" Chaoyang, however, kept his eyes fixed on me, not blinking. "He's my little uncle." I never imagined that the world could be so small. Chi Ming-che was actually Chaoyang's little uncle. As we passed each other, Chaoyang whispered, "Jin Lan, you're something." I knew that Chaoyang thought I had deliberately gotten close to Chi Ming-che, that I was still pestering him. My eyelashes fluttered gently, and I replied, Chao Yang, do you think you're worthy? I didn't finish my sentence, but I believed he understood. Chao Yang turned back in disbelief. I took Chi Mingche's arm and left, not looking back, and thus didn't see the sudden darkening of his face or his tightly clenched fists. For dinner, I cooked several of my signature dishes. Chi Mingche complimented my cooking skills. My mother had told him that I couldn't cook. Of course, my mother didn't know that I had developed these cooking skills for Chao Yang, just because he would feel uncomfortable 9 times out of 10 when eating out. Unfortunately, he never showed any gratitude and just took my care for granted. In fact, there's no such thing as so many things being taken for granted. It was just that I was willing to compromise for Chao Yang. I looked at Chi Mingche, smiled and said politely, I'll cook for you again if I have the chance. Chi Mingche also smiled. I've actually thought about what life would be like after getting married. 2 people, a cat and a dog. The house doesn't have to be big. We can each be busy with our own things on weekdays and go on trips together during holidays. Chi Mingche smiled, and there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite understand. She didn't like my cat and thought I was too busy with work. What a strange reason. I couldn't help but laugh. Everyone really has their own experiences. After I finished eating, this time Chi Mingche didn't remind me. He directly reached out and wiped the corner of my mouth. I was taken aback. Then I heard him say, I think we're quite suitable. What do you think? I didn't want to start a new relationship so soon. I told Chi Mingche that I needed to think about it. Chi Mingche drove me home. When the car stopped in front of the hotel, he frowned slightly. I couldn't help but explain. I've been too busy with work recently. I was planning to look for a house when I had time. Chi Mingche thought for a moment. I'm on leave recently. I can help you find a house. After thinking it over, I asked for his help. After all, I really didn't have the time. My mom was right. Having more friends makes things more convenient. But I didn't expect Chi Mingche to be so efficient. Early the next morning, he told me to pack my things and get ready to move. The new house was even closer to my company than the hotel. I transferred the rent to Chi Mingche. He said the landlord had only one condition. I had to live alone and not bring anyone else back. I readily agreed. I specially took an afternoon off to move. When I showed up in front of him with only one suitcase, I could clearly see the surprise on his face. When we arrived at the new home, I found that it had already been cleaned spotlessly. I took this afternoon off for nothing. Chi Mingche and I stared at each other in the living room. I rolled up my sleeves and stood up. To thank you, I'll cook dinner tonight. We went to the nearby supermarket to buy groceries, but I didn't expect to run into Chao Yang there. He hated going to the supermarket the most. Why was he here with so much patience? As soon as Chao Yang turned around, I saw the girl on his arm. She was smiling sweetly and would lean on Chao Yang when she was happy. No wonder. Only the person he truly loved could make him change his mind. Chi Mingche took my hand that was gripping the shopping cart and said gently, Be careful. It was not until he took the shopping cart from me that I came back to my senses. I'm fine. However, Chao Yang had already heard the sound and turned his head to look in my direction. His expression changed slightly. What are you doing here? Just as I was about to speak, Chi Mingche tightened his grip on my hand and said, I'm accompanying Lan Lan to buy groceries. I was slightly surprised. So they knew each other. Chao Yang's face instantly took on a strange expression. He stared at our intertwined hands for a long time, and a hint of annoyance gradually appeared between his brows. So it was you that day. Chi Mingche nodded slightly. It's me. It was not until the girl beside him asked curiously, Chao Yang, who are they? Chao Yang, however, kept his eyes fixed on me, not blinking. He's my little uncle. I never imagined that the world could be so small. Chi Mingche was actually Chao Yang's little uncle. As we passed each other, Chao Yang whispered, Jin Lan, you're something. I knew that Chao Yang thought I had deliberately gotten close to Chi Mingche, that I was still pestering him. My eyelashes fluttered gently, and I replied, Chao Yang, do you think you're worthy? I didn't finish my sentence, but I believed he understood. Chao Yang turned back in disbelief. I took Chi Mingche's arm and left, not looking back, and thus didn't see the sudden darkening of his face or his tightly clenched fists. For dinner, I cooked several of my signature dishes. Chi Mingche complimented my cooking skills. My mother had told him that I couldn't cook. Of course, my mother didn't know that I had developed these cooking skills for Chao Yang, just because he would feel uncomfortable 9 times out of 10 when eating out. Unfortunately, he never showed any gratitude and just took my care for granted. In fact, there's no such thing as so many things being taken for granted. It was just that I was willing to compromise for Chao Yang. I looked at Chi Mingche, smiled and said politely, I'll cook for you again if I have the chance. Chi Mingche also smiled. I've actually thought about what life would be like after getting married. 2 people, a cat and a dog. The house doesn't have to be big. We can each be busy with our own things on weekdays and go on trips together during holidays. Chi Mingche smiled, and there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite understand. She didn't like my cat and thought I was too busy with work. What a strange reason. I couldn't help but laugh. Everyone really has their own experiences. After I finished eating, this time Chi Mingche didn't remind me. He directly reached out and wiped the corner of my mouth. I was taken aback. Then I heard him say, "I think we're quite suitable. What do you think?" I didn't want to start a new relationship so soon. I told Chi Mingche that I needed to think about it. Chi Mingche drove me home. When the car stopped in front of the hotel, he frowned slightly. I couldn't help but explain. I've been too busy with work recently. I was planning to look for a house when I had time. Chi Mingche thought for a moment. I'm on leave recently. I can help you find a house. After thinking it over, I asked for his help. After all, I really didn't have the time. My mom was right. Having more friends makes things more convenient. But I didn't expect Chi Mingche to be so efficient. Early the next morning, he told me to pack my things and get ready to move. The new house was even closer to my company than the hotel. I transferred the rent to Chi Mingche. He said the landlord had only one condition. I had to live alone and not bring anyone else back. I readily agreed. I specially took an afternoon off to move. When I showed up in front of him with only one suitcase, I could clearly see the surprise on his face. When we arrived at the new home, I found that it had already been cleaned spotlessly. I took this afternoon off for nothing. Chi Mingche and I stared at each other in the living room. I rolled up my sleeves and stood up. To thank you, I'll cook dinner tonight. We went to the nearby supermarket to buy groceries. But I didn't expect to run into Chao Yang there. He hated going to the supermarket the most. Why was he here with so much patience? As soon as Chao Yang turned around, I saw the girl on his arm. She was smiling sweetly, and would lean on Chao Yang when she was happy. No wonder. Only the person he truly loved could make him change his mind. Chi Mingche took my hand that was gripping the shopping cart and said gently, "Be careful." It was not until he took the shopping cart from me that I came back to my senses. I'm fine. However, Chao Yang had already heard the sound and turned his head to look in my direction. His expression changed slightly. "What are you doing here?" Just as I was about to speak, Chi Mingche tightened his grip on my hand and said, "I'm accompanying Lan Lan to buy groceries." I was slightly surprised, so they knew each other. Chao Yang's face instantly took on a strange expression. He stared at our intertwined hands for a long time, and a hint of annoyance gradually appeared between his brows. "So it was you that day?" Chi Mingche nodded slightly. "It's me." It was not until the girl beside him asked curiously, "Chao Yang, who are they?" Chao Yang, however, kept his eyes fixed on me, not blinking. "He's my little uncle." I never imagined that the world could be so small. Chi Mingche was actually Chao Yang's little uncle. As we passed each other, Chao Yang whispered, "Jin Lan, you're something." I knew that Chao Yang thought I had deliberately gotten close to Chi Mingche, that I was still pestering him. My eyelashes fluttered gently, and I replied, "Chao Yang, do you think you're worthy?" I didn't finish my sentence, but I believed he understood. Chao Yang turned back in disbelief. I took Chi Mingche's arm and left, not looking back, and thus didn't see the sudden darkening of his face or his tightly clenched fists. For dinner, I cooked several of my signature dishes. Chi Mingche complimented my cooking skills. My mother had told him that I couldn't cook. Of course, my mother didn't know that I had developed these cooking skills for Chao Yang, just because he would feel uncomfortable 9 times out of 10 when eating out. Unfortunately, he never showed any gratitude, and just took my care for granted. In fact, there's no such thing as so many things being taken for granted. It was just that I was willing to compromise for Chao Yang. I looked at Chi Mingche, smiled, and said politely, "I'll cook for you again if I have the chance." Chi Mingche also smiled and said, "I'm really fond of the dishes you cook." I wasn't sure if he was serious until I saw him off at the door before he left. "Lan Lan, think it over again. I truly believe we're a great match, and our relationship could progress further." I asked him to give me some more time. However, when I returned to the house and was lying on the sofa, scrolling through my moments, I saw a piece of news that almost made my blood freeze. It had only been half a month since Chao Yang and I broke up, and he had already posted a moments showing his affection with that girl. He made a high-profile announcement that they would get married in 2 months. The girl in the photo was smiling so sweetly, but in the comments, I saw a comment from a mutual friend. "Isn't this Lin Lin? Congratulations on getting what you want. Lin Lin, getting what you want." These 6 words almost broke me down. It was like someone had harshly tugged at my bleeding wound, almost making me faint. So the person Chao Yang was going to marry was her, Lin Lin, his first love. It turned out that Chao Yang had been lying to me all along. He had never forgotten Lin Lin. Then, what about the 7 years I spent with him? Was I just a substitute? What he liked wasn't the girl next door type, it was Lin Lin. It had always been her. In his dreams at midnight, when he held me in his arms, didn't he feel even a little bit guilty? Yes, in his eyes, I was just a woman who tried every means to pester him. A woman who could be sent away with Yuan. With trembling hands, I opened WeChat, blocked Chao Yang completely, and then opened Chi Mingche's chat box and sent him a message. "I agree, the condition is that we get married next month." Throwing my phone aside, I lit a cigarette. I, Jin Lan, have never admitted defeat in my life. Chi Mingche didn't reply. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and Chi Mingche was standing there. He walked in, and his face didn't have his usual smile. Instead, he looked rather serious. "Have you thought it through?" I met his gaze. "I have. You think I'm suitable?" And I also want to marry someone suitable. Love is the most elusive thing. It's like a handful of sand. The more you try to hold it, the faster it slips away. It's better for me to just let go this way. Happiness might come more easily. Without hesitation, Chi Mingche said, "Okay, I agree, my future Mrs. Chi." That day, he emphasized the words Mrs. Chi heavily, and there was a triumphant smile on his lips, as if he had achieved a great victory. I understood that his feelings for me were the same as mine. For him, being suitable was the best choice. This was for the best. Neither of us would owe the other anything. Chi Mingche was very efficient due to the tight schedule. He asked me about the people I wanted to invite, and our wedding invitations were quickly sent out. When my best friend received the invitation, she was stunned. She immediately asked me how I found such a perfect man. He couldn't explain, and could only fob her off. Soon, I received a call from Chao Yang. Looking at the constantly ringing phone, I directly hung up and blocked his number. But I didn't expect him to actually wait for me at the entrance of my company. Since what's coming can't be avoided, I pulled him to a nearby alley. There was a hint of gloom on Chao Yang's face. "Jin Lan, you've only known each other for a month, and you're getting married. Don't think I don't know what you're up to." He reached out and braced himself against the wall behind me as I was pulled by him. I could clearly see his eyes, which were filled with anger. "Do you think you can get in with my family like this? Do you think you're qualified to be my aunt?" I looked up at him and slowly curled the corners of my mouth. Chao Yang fell silent, and just stared at me fiercely. "Do you think this is for you? Chao Yang, don't overestimate yourself. I am marrying Chi Mingche. We'll support each other and grow old together. What does this have to do with you?" I watched as Chao Yang's face gradually lost its color in front of me. But this wasn't the end. I continued. "Besides, it's not up to you to decide whether I'm qualified or not. It's Chi Mingche who has the say. You've received the invitation, right? Don't you know what that means?" He knew, so he left with his lips tightly pursed. Instead of going home, I went straight to the hospital. Chi Mingche had a surgery today. I waited for him to finish, so we could have dinner together. But I didn't expect that just as Chi Mingche came out of the operating room, I heard a scream. Right after that, I saw a man holding a knife charging towards us. He was shouting something, but I couldn't make it out. He was clearly aiming at Chi Mingche, and Chi Mingche was still in his surgical gown. There was nothing around us to block him. The only thing I had was the bag in my hand. Without thinking, I threw the bag at the man's face. This action enraged him, and his target became me. As I watched the knife getting closer and closer to me, I tripped and fell to the ground. Chi Mingche immediately kicked the man's wrist. The security guards arrived in time and took the man away. I was sitting on the ground, still in shock. Chi Mingche checked me to make sure I was okay. Then, looking at me with a hint of inquiry in his eyes, he asked, "He was after me. Why were you in such a hurry?" What a strange question. How could I not be in a hurry? You were unarmed, and at least I had a bag. I stood up, leaning on his hand. "Besides, your hands are for performing surgeries. They can't afford to get hurt." After saying that, I walked forward, but Chi Mingche didn't follow. When I looked back, I saw Chi Mingche looking at his own hand, lost in thought. I called his name, and he slowly smiled at me and came over to take my hand. I asked him what he was smiling about, but he didn't answer. My family didn't agree with me becoming a doctor. They wanted me to go into business. It took me several years of fighting before they gave up. Chi Mingche fastened my seatbelt for me. "You're the first person who's ever thought about protecting my hand." He gently kissed me on the cheek. The book says that the person one wants to protect most in a crisis is the one they care about the most. I stared blankly at Chi Mingche. His eyes reflected my image, shining brightly. "Lan Lan, I think there could be more between us than just being suitable." Before I could fully understand what he meant, I went back to his place with Chi Mingche. The decoration was simple yet elegant. Soon, a cute cat peeked out and walked over. She rubbed against me, and I picked her up, skillfully stroking her. We got along well in no time. Chi Mingche looked at us helplessly, and I even detected a hint of indulgence in his eyes. "Her name is Yang Chao. And feed her some cat food. I'll go and cook." My eyes lit up. What a great thing. I could play with the cat while someone else cooked. I readily agreed. That evening passed pleasantly. When Chi Mingche saw me off, he told me before leaving that there would be a family gathering in a few days, and he wanted to introduce me to some people. It was my first time meeting someone's parents, and I was a bit nervous. My first thought was to change my hairstyle to a more gentle one and wear a more ladylike dress. But Chi Mingche stopped me. He held my hand and shook his head. "You look perfect like this. You don't need to change anything. Your presence is the best arrangement." Chi Mingche's hand was warm, and that warmth spread to my heart. Once, I changed myself to please Chao Yang. I never thought that there would be a man who would say I was the best arrangement. This feeling was really wonderful. Chi Mingche and I arrived at his family's villa. I didn't expect there to be so many people in Chi Mingche's house. They were all well dressed and had elegant manners. Only then did I realize that he was Chao Yang's little uncle, and his family was extremely wealthy. Chi Mingche held my hand tightly and solemnly introduced me to his family members. His family was very kind. I knew their kindness stemmed from Chi Mingche's emphasis on me. Since that night, his attitude towards me had changed. Lodi could feel it, and I finally understood what he meant. "Lan Lan, I think there could be more between us than just being suitable." So was this the reason for this family gathering? I couldn't help but look up at Chi Mingche. He smiled and nodded at me somehow. My cheeks felt a little hot. This feeling of being cherished was truly wonderful. The only exception was Chao Yanghe had a gloomy face since we entered. For some reason, I didn't see Lin Linchi should have been there. After dinner, Chi Mingche had something to discuss with the elders, so I went for a walk in the garden. When I walked to a secluded place, a tall figure suddenly appeared in front of me. I knew it was Chao Yang, but with the light behind him, I couldn't see his expression clearly. Chao Yang's voice was a bit hoarse. Lan Lan, can you not marry Chi Mingche? I know you're just trying to get back at me. You still have feelings for me in your heart. If I were the old me, I would have panicked if my thoughts were read like this. However, after getting along with Chi Mingche, I regained my confidence. Chao Yang was still the same Chao Yang, arrogant in self, conceited he had never truly understood me. I smiled faintly and took 2 steps back. Chao Yang, you couldn't give me the happiness I want now. There's someone who can. I don't want to have any more involvement with you. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Chao Yang's hand gradually tightened. I could almost feel his restraint and trembling. Lan Lan, if I say I love you, will you come back to me? I sighed. Why did he have to do this? There were too many hurts and grievances between us, like cracks that could never be completely healed once they appeared. Moreover, I no longer loved him. I broke free from Chao Yang's hand. We can't go back. Neither of us can. Before leaving, I looked at Chao Yang, who seemed to be petrified on the spot, and said softly, Chao Yang, you're just not willing to let go. Don't look for me anymore. Just as I entered the house, I saw Chi Mingche hurrying over. I rarely saw Chi Mingche in a hurry. He put his arm around me. There are a lot of bugs in the garden. Let me take you to my room. After that, he led me upstairs. When passing by a balcony on the upper floor, I saw the garden downstairs and suddenly understood. As soon as we entered the room, I blocked Chi Mingche against the door with a smile. Did you see something? He put his arm around my waist, with a hint of helplessness in his eyes. Lan Lan, stop it. Worry at home. I raised my eyebrows. Chi Mingche, Dr. Chi, I'll ask you again, were you jealous? This time, Chi Mingche didn't evade. Yes, I was. I didn't expect him to admit it so readily. Chi Mingche's face slowly approached mine, and I could almost hear the sound of my own heartbeat. It was so rapid and filled with joy. Chi Mingche's kiss was gentle and inclusive. I gradually lost myself in it. At that almost intoxicating moment, I only heard one sentence. I like you. My eyes became slightly moist. I had been wandering in the desert for so long, and finally, I found an oasis. After the kiss ended, Chi Mingche started showing me around the room. Besides a large number of medical books, there were also many books on finance. I was discussing this with the elders just now. Besides my work at the hospital, I have a lot of investments. I'll sort them out, and in the future, you and I will manage them together. Chi Mingche's smile was gentle and firm. I knew this was his promise. I was a part of his future. I pursed my lips and slightly raised my head. Chi Mingche, at first, I thought about marrying you because... Chi Mingche reached out and covered my mouth to stop me from speaking further. I already knew none of that matters as long as you have me in your heart from now on. I nodded vigorously. Perhaps all my previous misfortunes were to lead me to meet Chi Mingche. I saw a photo in Chi Mingche's photo frame. It was a picture of Chao Yang playing basketball in college. Like I had discovered something new, I called Chi Mingche over and pointed at myself in the corner. What a coincidence, UVE had a photo of me for so long. I looked at him with a smile, but I found that Chi Mingche wasn't smiling. Instead, he seemed nostalgic. He took the photo. It was Chao Yang's basketball game. I originally went to take pictures of him, but then I captured you at that time. I thought, this girl has such bright eyes. She's really beautiful. That night, I had a big argument with my family about studying medicine. The next day, I went abroad. By the time I finished my business and had time to look for you, you had already graduated and become Chao Yang's girlfriend. I was surprised to hear this. I looked at Chi Mingche, and he pulled me to sit down. I recognized you on the balcony of the club that day. I didn't expect to overhear your breakup. I was thinking about how to get close to you when my mom arranged this blind date. For May didn't want to go at first, but then I saw your photo. So that's why he didn't expose me when I said he was my boyfriend. Chi Mingche pushed aside my hair and kissed my forehead. After all these twists and turns, it's still us. We're destined to be together. Since we confirmed our feelings for each other, Chi Mingche would pick me up and drop me off when he had time. When he was busy, he would often call me. I no longer had to be on tenterhooks all the time, or deliberately please anyone. He accepted me completely. I felt a long-lost sense of ease. One day, at my place, it was already late. After dinner, Chi Mingche asked if he could stay the night. My face flushed hot. I knew I was blushing. Chi Mingche rubbed my head. What are you thinking? I'll sleep in the guest room. I was too embarrassed to look at him. The landlord doesn't allow others to stay overnight. Others aren't allowed, but the landlord is. Chi Mingche looked at me with a smile. I suddenly understood. No wonder he could find a house so quickly. After that, Chi Mingche and I went to try on wedding dresses and booked the wedding banquet. Everything was busy but fulfilling. After letting go of the past, I discovered that happiness and joy were so simple. However, on the night before the wedding, I suddenly had severe abdominal pain. Chi Mingche rushed me to the hospital and quickly and methodically examined me. After the results came out, Chi Mingche didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's acute appendicitis. Jin Lan, you need to have a minor operation. You can't get married tomorrow. I was speechless for a long time. Perhaps this was the punishment from heaven, making me have an operation on the day I was supposed to get married. But I didn't care anymore. When to get married wasn't important to me. I sighed and said to Chi Mingche, Mr. Chi Mingche, you've worked hard. You can't get married tomorrow either. Chi Mingche showed his standard smile. Well, we're in the same boat. We're quite destined. I laughed, but the movement made my body hurt, and I couldn't help but hiss. Chi Mingche gave me a hug and whispered in my ear, don't be afraid, I'm here. The operation was quick for Chi Mingche. It was a very simple operation. During my hospitalization, whenever Chi Mingche had time, he would come to the ward to accompany me. His colleagues at the hospital, who had never seen him like this, couldn't help but tease him. He was so busy that he even looked a bit haggard. Our wedding was postponed. Many people called to ask. Chi Mingche took care of everything and told me to focus on recovering. Chao Yang came when Chi Mingche wasn't there. I was a bit surprised by his appearance. His eyes were dark-circled, and he looked even more haggard than Chi Mingche. Thank you for coming to see me. I am almost ready to be discharged. I realized that I could talk to Chao Yang calmly. Chao Yang sat on the chair beside the hospital bed, looking at me with profound pain in his eyes. My wedding is cancelled. I'm not going to marry Lin Lin. Chao Yang had always been high-spirited, but this time he hung his head slightly, and he looked so unfamiliar to me. That's really a pity. I didn't know what else to say, so I could only sigh. Chao Yang looked at me. He slowly slid off the chair, and his usually straight back hunched over, until he almost knelt on the ground. Lan, after you left, I felt like there was a void in my heart. I thought I was just not used to it. But even when I announced my marriage to Lin Lin, that void could never be filled. You said I was just reluctant to let go. But that's not true. I love you. I can't live without you. I know I realized this too late. Will you give me another chance? I looked at Chao Yang. Tears rolled down his cheeks, and his pain was so palpable, but all I could do was sigh. The days when my emotions were tied to his had become so distant. I said softly, Chao Yang, no one will wait for you in the same place. Once you miss it, it's gone. After a long time, Chao Yang stood up in a daze and left before Chi Mingche came back. I looked at his back, feeling a bit dazed. I used to always watch his back, but never had I felt it was so heavy, until I fell into a warm embrace. Chi Mingche had come in without my noticing. It's all in the past. I smiled. Yes, it's all in the past. After I recovered from my illness, I suddenly had no desire to hold a traditional wedding. I decided to have a destination wedding. Chi Mingche let me decide everything. He took his marriage leave, and we boarded a plane bound for a foreign country. We kissed in the flower fields, held hands in the deep sea, and embraced at sunset. When the vacation ended, we returned to Ying City. Looking at the two large characters at the airport, I couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions. Once Jin Lan, in a humble way, concealed her true self and pretended to be someone she wasn't, thinking that she could obtain happiness by going all in. But she finally realized that the person who loves you will love you for who you are, and you don't have to be so cautious. Suddenly, I remembered something. Your ex-girlfriend broke up with you because you were busy, right? How did you get so much leave? Chi Mingche ruffled my hair. You've married me. Even if I don't have time, I'll make some. I can't let my wife run away. I couldn't help but laugh. Chi Mingche held my hand with one hand and carried the luggage with the other. We headed home. Later, I learned that Chao Yang indeed didn't marry Lin Lin, and Lin Lin went abroad again. I heard that he remained in a state of depression for a long time. Due to Chi Mingche's family, we eventually held a Bubanda wedding. The wedding was grand, and we received everyone's blessings. Especially when I saw my mother smiling with tear-filled eyes, I felt completely content. When we were making toasts, I saw Chao Yang seemed to have matured. Alothi held his glass steadily and said congratulations to me. Chi Mingche and I accepted the wine as we left. I heard Chao Yang say behind us, I'm sorry and I wish you happiness. Chi Mingche squeezed my hand and said, thank you. I let him lead me forward, towards the future and happiness. Being suitable isn't so bad when you still believe in love. It will always come to you unexpectedly. Chao Yang's side story. The biggest mistake I've made in my life is pushing away the person I love the most with my own hands. I gave Jin Lan yuan, asking her to be sensible and stop pestering me. After that countless days and nights, I regretted it bitterly. I was in so much pain that it almost suffocated me, and there seemed to be no way out. When Jin Lan moved out of our home, I was with Lin Lin. Lin Lin returned to the country suddenly the moment she appeared in front of me. My heart twitched. The feeling of unrequited love from my youth surged back like a tide, and I got together with her without thinking. We hadn't been together for long when Lin Lin suggested getting married, and I agreed. I even proposed to her at my birthday party. Of course, I saw the heartbroken look on Jin Lan's face. The plastic knife might not have been harmful, but I knew it represented her sincere heart. She laid it bare and threw it at me, watched it fall to the ground and get covered in dust. The days with Jin Lan had long since lost their passion. The touch I felt when she gave up everything to come to Ying City with me had gradually faded away over time. I convinced myself not to feel guilty. Jin Lan loved me so much. She should have been content to be with me for so long. Unfortunately, I didn't understand at that time that it wasn't plainness. It was love that had penetrated into every corner of my life, just like eating, drinking, and breathing. It was ordinary and unremarkable, but I couldn't do without it. I recalled those days countless times, and each time, I shuddered as if my blood had frozen. When I learned that Jin Lan had a boyfriend, I sneered. I thought she surely couldn't bear to leave me, and would use all kinds of methods to get me back. But when I found out that the person was my little uncle, Chi Mingche, I lost my composure. My little uncle had always been the pride of the family. His life was almost perfect, except for his marriage. When Lin Lin asked me who he was, I had to pretend to be nonchalant and introduce him. I kept my eyes on Jin Lan. She was so calm, cold, and strange, completely different from the person in my memory. Then I saw the hands of Chi Mingche and her intertwined. My little uncle, Chi Mingche, was a very decisive person. Once he made up his mind about something, he would go for it. Just like when the family didn't allow him to be a doctor, he was willing to cut off relations with the family. And in the end, the family had to compromise. At that moment, I felt a bit flustered, and then anger burned inside me for no reason, but I had no right to question anything. That night, as I lay beside Lin Lin, and she hugged me from behind, all I could think about was Jin Lan. I found that I couldn't stand to see her being indifferent to me, nor could I stand to see her being intimate with someone else. Lin Lin hugged me tightly and said it was time to set the wedding date. I just replied with a simple okay. It wasn't because I really wanted to marry Lin Linny, was waiting for Jin Lan to come and beg me. She had loved me for so many years, how could she bear to see me marry someone else? But I didn't expect that I would soon receive the wedding invitation from Jin Lan, and Chi Mingche was Chi Mingche who delivered it in person. My little uncle didn't even consult with the family before deciding on this marriage. Well, no one in the family would object to the person he wanted to marry. Chi Mingche looked at me with no smile on his face. Chao Yang, you know what to do, right? I knew I should disappear from their sight. But I didn't want to. Jin Lan was mine, she should be mine. I found Jin Lan and questioned her. She casually told me that she would grow old with Chi Mingche. Grow old together. These 4 words hit me like a heavy hammer. The pain spread throughout my body, through my blood, and I could barely stand still. How could I watch her grow old with someone else? Before I could figure out how to make it up to Jin Lan, I saw her at the family gathering. She stood with Chi Mingche, a perfect match. The family members almost immediately accepted her. Watching her every move, she was the way she used to be, lively and bright, but I felt a bit strange. I realized in a trance that this was how she looked when I first met her many years ago. It was on the college basketball court. Her face was blushing as she stood in front of me and nervously handed me a bottle of water. Chao Yang, would you like some water? Another girl who liked me took the water nonchalantly, along with her heart. How long had it been since I last saw Jin Lan like this? How long had it been since I seriously looked at her expression and paid attention to her emotions? Without thinking, I followed my instincts and found Jin Lan. Threw away all my pride and asked her if she could come back to me. She said I was just reluctant to let go. But if it was just reluctance, how could it keep me awake at night? After I went back, I broke up with Lin Lin. She slapped me hard. Chao Yang, you don't deserve to be loved. Her words were like a curse, but I seemed to be numbed. Yes, I didn't deserve it. I once had the most sincere love, but I lost it. After a long time, I slowly lowered my head, but the tears couldn't stop flowing. I desperately wanted Jin Lan to come back. I missed her so much. When I learned from my family that their wedding was cancelled, I was overwhelmed with ecstasy for a moment. But the next second, I fell from heaven into hell. Jin Lan was sick. It wasn't that she didn't want to get married. It was just postponed. When I saw her again, I didn't care about anything else. My pride, my dignity, I threw them all away. I knelt down and begged Jin Lan to come back. I told her I loved her. But she was so calm when she looked at me. There was no light in her eyes, just like how she looked at others. We can't go back. These 4 words shattered all my hopes. I don't know how I walked out of the hospital room. When I went out, I saw Chi Mingche waiting outside. He was looking at the hospital room, with a gentle smile on his lips. Chao Yang, don't you understand yet? Lan Lan loves me. No, it's time for you to find your own happiness. I saw the way Jin Lan looked at Chi Mingche. There was light in her eyes. I fled in humiliation. I was in a mess for a long time. I stayed at home, drinking alcohol to numb myself, hoping to relieve the pain in my heart. But the longing was too painful. I found a mutual friend of Jin Lan and me and begged him to let me look at his phone. He sighed but couldn't resist. Meihe said, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" He said that he was the one who invited Jin Lan that day, and Jin Lan didn't have a boyfriend at all. What had I said that day? Jin Lan, you didn't take that. Are you trying to make me feel guilty so you can keep pestering me? I trampled on her dignity. I was the one who pushed her away into someone else's arms. I saw Jin Lan's moments. She was smiling so happily, so brightly, with an expression I had never seen when she was with me. I could only make her cry, make her sad, and break her heart. Lin Lin was right. I didn't deserve to be loved. Losing her was the best punishment for me. That night, I had my last drink under the influence of alcohol. I fell into a deep sleep. In my dream, I seemed to return to the past, to the days when I was with Jin Lan. I no longer lost my temper with her. I cherished every moment with her carefully, and tried every way to show her my love. But when the sky began to brighten, the beautiful dream vanished. I returned to reality. When I opened my eyes, there was only the cold room and suffocating despair. I deleted all the things related to Jin Lan on my phone. But what was the use? She still remained in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, her face would appear. Until one day, I was so desperate to see her, that I had someone recover the data on my phone, and started reading our chat records bit by bit. I realized that I had truly had such a wonderful love. I knew I could never forget her. Later, I joined the family company and started learning to be mature. I filled my time with work, just like Jin Lan did when she was with me. She didn't have much ambition for her career originally, but because of my neglect, she could only focus on work and became a strong-willed woman. When Jin Lan and Chi Mingche held their Bubanda wedding, I still went. Watching them walk towards me, I suppressed all my emotions and raised my glass to wish her happiness. Jin Lan seemed a bit surprised, and then she smiled at me. She and Chi Mingche accepted my blessing calmly. She would become my relative, and I would watch her be happy with my own eyes. I knew this was the best distance for us. She would talk to me and smile at me, even if it's like drinking poison to quench my thirst. Even if I'll be trapped in this love that can never see the light forever, I'm willing. It's all my own doing.